The arena lights burned like suns above the crowd. Hundreds of alien voices echoed through the vast dome, filling the air with laughter, mockery, and strange metallic songs. At the center of the arena stood Daniel, a lone human, surrounded by species from dozens of worlds. His clothes were torn from training. His body looked thin compared to the armored giants around him. To them, he looked weak, fragile, and laughable. The alien woman stood across from him, tall and powerful, her silver skin reflecting the lights. Her armor glowed with blue lines, showing her rank among her people. She crossed her arms and smirked, her sharp teeth flashing as she spoke to the crowd. "This is the human they send," she said, her voice carrying across the arena. "He has bones like glass, muscles like wet rope, and fear in his eyes." The crowd roared with laughter, their voices rising like thunder. Daniel did not answer. He simply stood there, his fists clenched, his heart pounding. He remembered the journey from Earth, the promise he made when he volunteered. Humans were underestimated in every council, mocked as latecomers to the stars. Daniel wanted to prove them wrong, but here, in front of this crowd, he looked like nothing but prey. Still, there was something in his eyes, something the alien woman could not understand. It was not fear, not exactly. It was a spark of fire that burned deep and silent. The alien woman stepped closer, circling him like a predator. Her laughter was cruel, every word a dagger. "Do you hear them, human?" she said, pointing to the crowd. "They laugh because you are weak. They laugh because you are nothing. They laugh because you do not belong among warriors." The crowd cheered again, chanting, stomping, their voices shaking the walls of the dome. Daniel lowered his head, his mind racing. Every insult felt like a hammer, but he did not break. Instead, he thought of Earth, of his people watching far away. He thought of the forests where he trained, the deserts where he learned to run under burning suns. He thought of his mother's words, "Strength is not in the body alone. Daniel, it is in the will to stand when all others fall." He breathed slowly, steadying himself. The alien woman laughed again, louder, mocking him more. "Do you see him? He cannot even lift his arms to fight," she said. "Look at his trembling legs. Look at his small frame. This is the strength of humanity? Pathetic." Her words sliced through the air, feeding the crowd with more laughter. Even some of the guards chuckled, shaking their heads. But Daniel's silence was not weakness. It was patience. He was studying her, watching her movements, listening to her rhythm. Every warrior who underestimated him gave him power. Every laugh built a fire inside his chest. He clenched his fists tighter, feeling the blood rush. The humiliation was heavy, but it did not crush him. It shaped him. Minutes felt like hours as the taunts continued. The alien woman raised her hand to quiet the crowd. Her eyes glowed as she looked at Daniel with mock pity. "You should beg for mercy before we begin," she said. "You should kneel and admit humans are weak, and maybe I will let you live." Her words hung in the air, sharp as blades. The crowd waited, eager to hear him break. Daniel lifted his head slowly, his eyes locking with hers. His voice was quiet, almost calm, but it carried across the silence. "I do not beg," he said. The words shocked the crowd, not because of their volume, but because of the fire behind them. For the first time, the laughter faded, replaced by murmurs. The alien woman tilted her head, her smile fading into something colder. She stepped closer, her voice low, mocking still. "Then you will die quickly, fragile one," she whispered. But Daniel did not move. He only stared back. In his silence, in his calm defiance, there was a storm waiting. The humiliation was not an end. It was the beginning. He let them laugh, let them call him weak, because he knew something they did not. Humans break bones, but they do not break spirit. And deep inside, Daniel promised himself, when a moment came, he would show them. He would show them all what it meant to be human. The alien woman raised her hand again, and the arena fell silent. The air was thick with anticipation, the crowd eager to see the humiliation turn into blood. She spread her arms wide and shouted, "If this human dares to stand among warriors, let him face a true test." The crowd erupted in approval, their voices shaking the metal walls of the dome. A massive gate at the side of the arena began to open with a grinding roar. Chains rattled, gears turned, and the sound of something heavy moving filled the air. The ground trembled under Daniel's boots, and the crowd leaned forward, their alien eyes glowing with hunger for the spectacle. From the shadows of the gate emerged a beast unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. It was a tiger, but not from Earth. Its body was twice the size of a horse, covered in black and crimson fur that rippled with power. Its golden eyes glowed like molten fire, and its roar thundered across the arena, shaking every stone. Sharp fangs glistened with venom, claws scraped the ground, leaving scars in the steel beneath. This was the Xylarian tiger, a creature feared across systems, a predator bred for war. The crowd screamed in delight, chanting the beast's name, Xylar, Xylar, Xylar. The alien woman smiled, her silver teeth catching the light. She turned to Daniel and spoke loud enough for all to hear. "Lift your hands if you can, fragile one. Defend yourself if you dare, or be devoured like prey." Her laughter echoed, cruel and certain. Daniel's heart raced, but his face stayed calm. He studied the beast as it prowled, every muscle coiled with deadly force. It circled him, growling low, the sound vibrating in his bones. The alien woman tilted her head, watching with smug amusement. To her, this was already over. The human was nothing but meat for the tiger's jaws. But Daniel had trained for moments like this. On Earth, he had run through deserts, climbed mountains with weights on his back, trained in gravity chambers that crushed bones and rebuilt strength. He was not the strongest, but he was the one who never stopped. And as the beast lunged, jaws wide, he moved. The tiger struck like lightning, claws swiping toward his chest. Daniel rolled to the side, the air slicing where his body had been. The crowd gasped at the speed of the human, some jeering, others laughing again. The alien woman smirked, calling out, "He runs like a frightened rat. See how he flees." But Daniel was not running, he was studying. Every strike, every roar, every movement of the beast was a lesson. He watched the way its shoulders shifted before it leapt, the way its tail coiled when it prepared to strike. He memorized the rhythm, storing every detail. The crowd saw a man avoiding death, but Daniel saw something else. He saw opportunity. Minutes passed. The beast grew more furious, its roars echoing like thunder. Claws slashed, teeth snapped, but Daniel kept moving, dodging, rolling, feeling the ground shake with every strike. Sweat ran down his face, his breath came heavy, but the fire in his eyes never dimmed. Every time the beast missed, its anger grew, and its movements became wilder. The alien woman frowned slightly, sensing something shifting. Daniel's arms ached, his legs screamed with pain, but his mind was sharper than ever. He thought of his people back on Earth, the children watching through broadcasts, the elders waiting for proof that humanity could rise. He thought of every insult, every laugh, every voice calling humans weak, and he whispered under his breath, "Not today." The beast lunged once more, faster than before, but Daniel did not dodge this time. He stepped forward, grabbing the beast's fur with both hands, feeling its raw strength slam against his body. The impact rattled his bones, nearly breaking him, but he held on. The crowd roared, shocked that he dared to touch the monster. The alien woman's smile faded, replaced by a flicker of surprise. Her eyes narrowed as she leaned forward, watching closely. Daniel gritted his teeth, muscles straining, his body shaking under the weight of the tiger. Every nerve screamed, every bone threatened to snap, but he did not let go. This was no longer survival, it was defiance. The beast roared in his face, hot breath washing over him, but Daniel stared back with fire in his eyes. The humiliation of moments ago turned into a challenge greater than death itself. He would not kneel, he would not break. The alien crowd expected fear, but what they saw was resolve. And in that moment, the arena shifted. No one was laughing anymore. Daniel's grip tightened, and though his body trembled, his spirit did not. This was the beginning of something none of them expected. The challenge had been given, and Daniel had accepted. Now, it was not only a fight against the beast, but against every voice that mocked humanity. And though his body bled and burned, his heart whispered the truth. Humans were not weak, they were unyielding. The Xylarian tiger roared, its voice shaking the arena like thunder. The ground beneath Daniel cracked as the beast slammed its paws, trying to crush him. He gritted his teeth, every muscle in his body straining against the monster's weight. The alien crowd screamed louder, some cheering for the tiger, others mocking the human for daring to resist. The beast twisted, its glowing eyes burning with fury, its fangs snapping close enough to tear the air around Daniel's face. His arms shook violently, his ribs felt like they would break, but still he held on. Sweat poured down his forehead. His vision blurred for a moment, yet his grip refused to loosen. This was no simple test of strength. It was survival against a predator born to kill. The alien woman leaned forward from her throne of steel, her smirk fading slowly into a curious stare. She had expected the fight to end quickly, but the human's stubbornness unsettled her. Her silver skin caught the light as she tilted her head, whispering something to the warrior beside her. "He should be dead already, yet he still clings to life," she said, her tone sharp with disbelief. Daniel's knees buckled under the weight. His arms screamed for release. But inside his mind, a voice echoed his mother's voice, telling him that strength lived in the will, not in the body. He thought of Earth, of the green forests and blue skies, of the people who believed humanity had no chance among the stars. And he thought of the promise he carried, to prove them wrong, to show that humans could rise where none expected. The tiger roared again, thrashing violently, throwing Daniel back across the arena floor. He hit the ground hard, dust and sparks rising around him, the crowd cheering wildly at the sight of him falling. The alien woman's laughter rang out once more, cruel and sharp. "See, fragile bones, even your will cannot hold against true power," she shouted. Daniel coughed, his lungs burning, but he pushed himself up slowly. His arms shook, blood stained his torn clothes, but his eyes remained fierce. The crowd expected him to stay down, but he refused. Step by step, he rose again, his body trembling, but his spirit unbroken. The tiger prowled, circling him, its golden eyes glowing with hunger. It lowered its massive head, growling low, waiting for the moment to strike. Daniel raised his fists, his breathing heavy but steady. He could not match the beast's strength, but he had something else. He had patience. He had courage. He had the unyielding fire of humanity. The tiger lunged, jaws wide, aiming to tear him apart. Daniel sidestepped at the last instant, driving his elbow into the beast's jaw. The impact was small compared to the monster's size, but it stunned the crowd. A human had struck the Xylarian tiger, and it had felled it. The alien woman narrowed her eyes, her mocking smile gone. Her voice was quieter now, almost tense. "He learns," she muttered, realizing the human was not just surviving. He was adapting. Daniel's chest heaved as he circled the beast, his mind sharper than ever. Every movement, every attack of the creature became clearer. He saw the rhythm of its strikes, the moment before it pounced, the way its weight shifted before a leap. The crowd grew restless, their laughter fading into murmurs. They had come to watch a human die, but instead they were witnessing something different, something dangerous, something they did not expect. The tiger roared again, frustrated by this prey that refused to fall. It charged, its claws tearing the ground, its roar shaking the walls. But Daniel was ready. He leapt aside, grabbing a fallen chain from the arena floor. With quick reflexes, he looped it around the beast's leg as it rushed past. The tiger stumbled, crashing into the dust, its roar echoing in fury. The crowd gasped, their voices rising in disbelief. A human, small and fragile compared to the alien warriors, had just brought the beast down. Daniel stood tall, chest heaving, the chains still in his hands. His body ached, his arms felt like fire, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. He had faced humiliation, he had faced the challenge, and now he faced the struggle without fear. The alien woman's eyes locked on him, her arrogance shaken, her mind whispering a truth she did not want to admit. This human was not prey. This human was something more. The beast rose again, angrier, more dangerous, but Daniel did not step back. The crowd was no longer laughing. They were silent, waiting, and in that silence, one truth became clear. The struggle was far from over, but the human had already changed the story. No longer the weak one mocked by the crowd. He was now the warrior who defied the impossible. The beast shook the dust from its massive body, its golden eyes blazing with fury. Chains dangled from its leg where Daniel had trapped it, but the Xylarian tiger snapped them off with a violent jerk. The crowd roared with approval, stomping their feet against the metal floor, hungry to see blood spill at last. The alien woman leaned forward, her silver eyes fixed on Daniel, her cruel smile gone, replaced by a sharp and curious stare. Daniel's chest heaved with exhaustion, his ribs ached with every breath, and his arms felt like stone. But deep inside, his spirit only grew stronger. He wiped the sweat and blood from his face, his gaze never leaving the beast. He knew this was the moment, the line between survival and victory. The tiger prowled again, lowering itself close to the ground, its muscles rippling beneath its crimson fur. Every step it took shook the arena floor, sending vibrations up Daniel's legs. The crowd hushed for a moment, sensing the clash to come. Even the alien woman sat still, her hands resting on her knees, her lips tightening as though she feared what she might see. The tiger roared and lunged, faster than before, its jaws opening wide enough to swallow a man whole. Daniel did not retreat this time. He ran forward, closing the gap instead of running from it. The crowd gasped in disbelief, some shouting in anger, others in awe. At the last second, Daniel slid under the beast's leap, his body scraping across the ground as claws missed him by inches. He grabbed a loose spear from the dirt and thrust it upward with all his might. The weapon struck the beast's side, not deep enough to kill, but enough to make it roar in pain and rage. The arena shook with the sound, the beast's cry echoing like thunder. The crowd howled, their cheers turning into a storm of noise. Some shouted for the tiger to rip him apart. Others whispered in shock that the human still lived. Daniel rose to his feet, his chest burning, his hands gripping the spear as though it were an extension of his soul. The tiger turned, blood dripping from its wound, its fury greater than ever. It charged again, but Daniel held his ground. Every instinct told him to run. Every nerve screamed for escape, but his heart roared louder. This was not the time to flee. This was the time to stand. The alien woman's eyes narrowed, her voice low as she whispered to herself. He dares to face it head on. He dares to fight like one of us. For the first time, her mockery faltered, replaced by something that felt dangerously close to respect. The tiger struck, its claws tearing into the spear, shattering it into splinters. The force of the blow hurled Daniel backward, his body slamming against the steel wall of the arena. The crowd erupted in cheers, believing it was finally over. But slowly, painfully, Daniel pushed himself up again, his legs trembling, blood running down his arm. The fire in his eyes had not dimmed. If anything, it burned brighter. The beast roared and leapt once more, its massive shadow swallowing him whole. And in that moment, Daniel did something no one expected. He stepped into the strike, catching the beast by its fur as it landed. Every bone in his body screamed, his muscles stretched to breaking, but he did not let go. The crowd gasped. The alien woman rose from her seat. A human had done the unthinkable. He had stopped the beast with his bare hands. Daniel's teeth clenched, his breath ragged, but his grip tightened. He dug his heels into the ground, every fiber of his being focused on one truth. He could not be weak, not here, not now. With a roar that matched the beast's, he lifted, slowly, impossibly. The tiger thrashed, its claws tearing at the air, its roar echoing in disbelief. But Daniel rose with it, inch by inch, until the massive predator was above him, its body hanging in his grip. The crowd fell silent. The laughter, the jeers, the chants all vanished in a single moment. Every alien I stared at the impossible sight. A human, mocked for weakness, now holding a roaring Xylarian tiger above his head. The alien woman's lips parted, her mocking words gone, replaced only by shock. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Impossible." Daniel's body shook, his arms burned with fire, his legs nearly collapsed. But his spirit held him firm. This was the turning point, the moment when humiliation became triumph. The crowd that had laughed at his weakness now stared in stunned silence. The predator that had been unleashed to destroy him was now his trophy of defiance. And Daniel, the fragile human, stood as a giant among giants. The arena was frozen in silence. No laughter, no mocking voices, no chant of the beast's name. Only the sound of Daniel's ragged breathing and the furious roars of the Xylarian tiger echoed through the dome. A fragile human, the one everyone had mocked, now stood with the monster raised above his head. The beast thrashed wildly, claws cutting through the air, its massive tail lashing like a whip. Its weight crushed down on Daniel's shoulders, his arms trembling as if about to snap. Every muscle in his body screamed for release, his vision blurred, yet he refused to drop the creature. The crowd leaned forward, alien eyes wide in disbelief, unable to understand how this fragile man could hold such power. The alien woman rose from her throne, her silver skin glowing under the harsh lights. Her smirk was gone, her face pale with shock, her lips pressed tight. She whispered to herself, but the words carried through the silence. "This is not possible. No human can do this." Her voice trembled, and for the first time, she looked uncertain. Daniel roared, his voice rising like thunder, a sound raw and primal. The roar of a human who refused to break. The roar of defiance against a galaxy that had laughed at him. He lifted the beast higher, step by step, until his arms locked in place, holding the massive tiger above him for all to see. The crowd gasped, their voices rising in confusion, in awe. Whispers spread like fire. "How does he do this? What strength is this? Humans are not weak." For generations, humanity had been dismissed as fragile newcomers. But now, one man shattered that belief with his impossible feat. The tiger roared again, but its cry no longer felt like dominance. It sounded desperate, trapped, humiliated by the one it was meant to destroy. Daniel's face twisted with pain, sweat dripping, veins bulging across his arms and neck. But his eyes still burned with fire, refusing to yield. He staggered forward, each step shaking the arena floor. The weight was unbearable, his bones groaned, but he carried the beast like a symbol of his people. Every alien watching knew this was not only a fight. It was a declaration, a message burned into their minds. Humans may look weak, but their spirit could lift worlds. The alien woman's hands tightened on the edge of her throne, her sharp nails scratching grooves into the metal. She had mocked him, called him fragile, worthless prey. Now she stared at him with wide eyes, her pride shattered by the sight before her. For the first time, she felt something she never expected: respect. Daniel turned slowly, letting the crowd see the truth with their own eyes. The massive predator, the beast they all feared, now dangled helplessly in the hands of a human. The silence of the crowd was deafening. It was the silence of disbelief, the silence of history changing before them. The tiger's thrashing slowed, its roars weakening as exhaustion took hold. Even the beast seemed stunned, unable to escape the unyielding grip of the man who held it. Daniel's body trembled like a mountain under storm, but still he endured. His teeth clenched, his voice a whisper under his breath. "I will not fall, not today, not ever." And then, with one final roar of defiance, Daniel lifted the tiger higher and slammed it down onto the ground. The impact shook the arena like an earthquake, dust and sparks flying into the air. The beast cried out, stunned and beaten, unable to rise. The crowd erupted, not in laughter, not in jeers, but in a storm of chaos. Some shouted in rage, refusing to accept what they saw. Others screamed in awe, chanting words they had never spoken for a human before. The alien woman stood frozen, her mouth open, her silver eyes wide. She had wanted his humiliation. She had wanted his death. Instead, she had witnessed a legend being born. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Humans are dangerous." Daniel stood above the fallen beast, his chest heaving, his arms covered in blood and sweat. He looked at the crowd, at the warriors who had mocked him, and without speaking a word, he let the silence declare the truth. The impossible had been done. A human had faced the unthinkable and won. The arena still trembled from the impact of the beast's fall. Dust hung in the air like smoke after a battlefield, and every alien I was fixed on the lone human standing tall. Daniel's chest heaved as he struggled to breathe, his arms heavy, his body battered and bruised. Yet he stood, unbroken, above the defeated Xylarian tiger. The crowd was silent. The same crowd that had mocked him, laughed at him, and called him fragile now sat frozen in disbelief. The chants of XYLAR, XYLAR were gone, replaced by stunned whispers. For the first time, not a single voice rose to laugh at the human. Daniel looked around slowly, his gaze sweeping across the alien faces. Some eyes were wide with fear, others narrowed in anger, but none dared to mock him now. Even the guards, armored and armed, shifted uneasily, their hands tightening around their weapons, as if sensing the balance of power had shifted. The human who was supposed to be prey now stood as predator. The alien woman, who had been his loudest tormentor, remained standing in shock. Her silver skin glowed under the lights, but the pride in her eyes had dimmed. Her smirk was gone, her lips pressed tight as though she fought to accept what she had just witnessed. For so long, she had called humans weak, fragile, nothing but glass bones and soft flesh. But the sight before her destroyed that belief. She whispered under her breath, "This should not be," and yet it is. Daniel did not speak. Words were unnecessary. His actions had already shouted louder than any speech could. He simply stood over the fallen tiger, blood dripping down his arm, his fists clenched not in rage but in quiet resolve. The silence of the arena carried more weight than the thunder of 1,000 voices. It was the silence of respect, forced out of those who had mocked him. The tiger let out a low growl, weak and defeated, its great body rising and falling with labored breaths. Daniel looked down at it, not with cruelty, but with understanding. The beast was not his enemy. It was only a weapon used to humiliate him. And now, like the crowd, it too had been silenced. The alien woman stepped forward, her eyes locked on Daniel. Every step she took echoed across the floor, breaking the silence. The crowd leaned in, waiting for her words, expecting her to lash out, to claim the moment back. But when she spoke, her voice was softer than before, almost reverent. "You should not have survived, human," she said, her tone uncertain. "You should not have done the impossible, and yet here you stand." Her words carried across the arena, and the silence deepened. Daniel lifted his head, his eyes meeting hers. He did not answer, because he did not need to. His silence was its own kind of roar, more powerful than any insult or boast. The crowd shifted, their whispers spreading faster now. Some looked at him with fear, others with awe, and some with envy. But all of them, every single one, now knew a truth they could not unsee. Humans were not weak. They were unpredictable, unyielding, dangerous. Daniel staggered forward, his body heavy, but he walked with the calm of victory. Each step echoed in the silence, each breath a reminder that he had endured what no one thought possible. The arena that had once been filled with mockery was now filled with quiet respect. The same voices that had laughed at his weakness now watched him with a mixture of fear and admiration. The alien woman clenched her fists, her pride wounded, but deep inside, even she could not deny what she had seen. Her voice lowered, almost like a confession. "Perhaps we were wrong about your kind," she said. The words stung her, but the crowd heard them, and they knew they were true. Daniel stopped at the center of the arena, standing tall despite his wounds. He looked once more at the crowd, at the faces of those who had mocked him, and in the silence that followed, something greater than victory was born. It was the birth of respect, the seed of fear, the beginning of a legend. The human who was humiliated, who was mocked as fragile, had turned the laughter of thousands into silence. And in that silence, he had won something far greater than a fight. He had won the acknowledgement of the galaxy. The silence of the arena stretched on, heavy and endless. Thousands of eyes remained fixed on Daniel, the human who had defied every expectation. The Xylarian tiger lay beaten at his feet, its great body heaving but no longer rising. And the man who had been mocked as weak stood tall, unshaken, a living answer to every insult thrown at him. Slowly, the silence broke, not with laughter, but with whispers. Those whispers spread through the crowd like fire across dry grass. They said humans were fragile, yet he lifted the beast. They said humans were prey, yet he stood victorious. Every voice that had once mocked now carried the weight of disbelief and awe. Daniel's eyes scanned the arena, taking in the alien faces that had ridiculed him. He saw fear in some eyes, respect in others, and in a few, the spark of something new, recognition. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, but in this single moment, that mistake could never be repeated. The truth was carved into their minds, burned into their memory forever. The alien woman who had mocked him most stood frozen, her lips pressed tight, her pride shattered. She had wanted a spectacle of humiliation, yet she had received a legend in its place. She lowered her gaze for a brief moment, a gesture that spoke louder than words. It was not surrender, not yet, but it was respect, the kind no warrior gives lightly. Daniel did not speak. His silence was his weapon. He had no need to shout, no need to boast, for the image of him holding the roaring beast above his head was already immortal. The crowd would carry it in their minds, and they would tell the story long after the dust of the arena had settled. The story of the human who would not kneel. The guards at the edge of the arena exchanged uneasy glances. Even they, armored and trained, knew they had seen something more dangerous than any weapon. They had seen the will of humanity, a will that could not be measured in muscle or bone. And in that moment, they understood that humans were not to be mocked, but to be feared. Daniel stepped away from the fallen tiger, his legs heavy, his body trembling. Each step he took echoed like thunder in the silence. When he reached the center of the arena, he turned and faced the crowd one last time. He raised his bloodied fist, not in arrogance, but in defiance and promise. The crowd erupted, not in laughter, but in cries that shook the dome. Cries of disbelief, of shock, of fear, and even of respect. Some shouted, "Impossible," others whispered, "Legend." And somewhere in the mix of voices, one truth was spoken again and again. Humans are not weak. The alien woman sat back slowly, her silver eyes still locked on Daniel. For the first time, she felt a chill she could not explain. It was not fear of the human before her, but fear of what he represented. If one human could do this, what could humanity become when united, when determined? She clenched her fists and whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." Daniel lowered his fist and turned toward the gate. He did not look back. He did not need to. The silence, the whispers, and the storm of voices behind him were proof enough. He had already won more than a fight. He had changed the way the galaxy saw his kind. The arena doors opened slowly, the grinding of gears echoing through the dome. Daniel walked toward the light beyond, each step carrying him from humiliation to legacy. The crowd's voices followed him, stories already forming, legends already being born. The fragile human who was mocked for weakness, who lifted a roaring beast above his head, would never be forgotten. And as he disappeared into the light, the final truth settled over the galaxy like a shadow. Humans were not fragile, they were dangerous. Humans were not prey, they were predators who could rise from the impossible. And the legacy of Daniel, the human who defied them all, had just begun.